What if I told you about something that had the same effect as LSD but involved nothing more than breathing air? Stick around, today's going to be a little trippy. I need to apologize for the lighting. Currently, I'm in a hotel about an hour north of Mexico City. It's some town that I can't pronounce. It has a lot of T's and Z's and C's. Anyway, back to the story. So there was a Czechoslovakian by the name of Stan Grof, and he did a lot of pioneering work on LSD. He used it for therapy. He made an interesting observation. He said that not everybody responds the same way to LSD, which means that the response that they're getting isn't caused by the LSD. Instead, he said, LSD simply acts as a catalyst, and what it brings to the surface is something that needs to be brought out and is going to be different for every person. So he came up with a form of therapy using LSD, and he treated over 4,000 patients, and apparently he had a fair amount of success with them because whatever it was that needed brought to the surface, the LSD brought to the surface, and they were able to deal with it, whatever that means. Anyway, toward the end of the 60s, early 70s, LSD fell out of favor with the government and became illegal, which left Stan Grof wondering what to do. And so he began to look for alternate ways of getting the same results that he got from LSD with his patients. Eventually, he developed a breathing technique which had the same effects as LSD, according to people who have done both. It's called holotropic breathing. Holotropic breathing consists of hyperventilating for a couple of hours, and you typically do this in pairs. One of you is the breather, and the other one is called the sitter. While they're doing this, they turn on trance-like pulsating music. I haven't been to one of these sessions. I don't know if that's what it sounds like, but that's what we're going to go with. The role of the sitter is essentially to keep the person calmed down, to help coach them through the hyperventilating process. And then when they start tripping, they talk them through it. They talk to them about it. Supposedly they have some sort of training, and they can help coach them on how best to deal with whatever they're doing. And then they have to incorporate whatever happened during the trip. I've done a lot of experiments. As I explained in another video, which you can see here, I have only a couple of criteria for doing experiments. One of them is that it can't be fatal, and the second one is I prefer them to be free. There simply is nothing freer than the air that we breathe, so we can check that box. So is it fatal? Well, no, it's not fatal. Okay, so maybe we have a candidate here. So I started planning out when I was going to do this holotropic breathing. Turns out I had a work trip coming up in Puerto Rico. I was going to be in Puerto Rico for a week, and every night after work, I'd have 4 or 5 hours to kill in my hotel room. Then I started to think about the consequences a little bit. What happens if I have a bad trip, for example? What happens if I'm supposed to be at work the next morning and I'm not responsive? I kick down the hotel room door, and there I am in a trip on the bed. Good trip, bad trip. You're really not supposed to be tripping out at work, you know? Even if it is free, even if it really is just from the air, you're not supposed to do LSD trips at work. Anyway, I talked to my wife and let her know what I was contemplating doing, and she just rolled her eyes. She's used to my experiments at this point. I did an experiment where I slept outside in a hammock down to 25 degrees, and that's right here, with just a little thin blanket and shorts and a t-shirt. Another time I went 6 days without eating anything, went 1.5 years without using shampoo, taking ice baths, did a lot of breathing. You can read about that here, and I held my breath for over 5.5 minutes. I've done a lot of really hot saunas. I ran 44 miles in a day once, tried various kinds of diets. I've experimented with different weightlifting techniques. So my wife is very used to this sort of thing. But then I started reading reviews about what happens when people do these things. And most of the time they're fine. Most of the time they're as fine as anybody else who goes on an LSD trip. But there were some of them who said, really, what good is going to come from starving your brain of oxygen for an hour and a half, which is essentially what you're doing with this holotropic breathing. You're hyperventilating so you don't get oxygen delivered to your brain, and over time what happens is weird stuff starts to happen in your head, and some people claim that they had never been normal again after that. Now the cynic in me suspects that perhaps they were weird before and now they're normal, and they just don't know what normal is. Who knows? In any case, I didn't want to do it. But that doesn't mean that you can't. Do a Google search of holotropic breathing, or look for a YouTube video on holotropic breathing. They'll walk you through how to hyperventilate, and then you will be able to trip out like you're on LSD with nothing but good free air. Isn't that awesome? You really do want to click on the Modern Day Spartan button here and subscribe because, again, who else is going to tell you stuff like this? Talk to you soon, and sorry again for the length.